This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
9:04 is the time on LBC. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's talk about Russia today, RT as it likes to be called nowadays. We have talked about this propaganda station, or I call it a propaganda station because that's exactly what it is. It is funded entirely by the Kremlin, and it is there to put forward the Russian view of events. Now, I've often wondered how on earth it passes the Ofcom test for impartiality, and it's been fined on many occasions by Ofcom for doing so. Not enough, in my view. There is form here where Ofcom have shut down propaganda channels. There was a Chinese channel, was it CGN, something like that Ofcom shut down. And it's not actually within the powers, I understand it, of the British government to shut down RT, even if they wanted to. It has to be done by Ofcom. Now, Ofcom will probably say, well, we'll only do it if they transgress the rules. And at the moment, they will say they haven't. I'm not a regular viewer of RT. They're quite clever in the way that they broadcast, because there are some programmes that you can't see any bias at all, but there are many others that I would suggest to you that you can. So, is Russia today, gone tomorrow? Corey, my producer, is very proud of that question. 0345 6060 973. What if it was banned? What would that say about us as a liberal democracy? Would it say that we'll tolerance for counter points of view, or do you think it would say, well, we're not putting up with people who are, to all intents and purposes, at the moment, our enemies? I mean, it's a strong thing to say, isn't it? But when Russia invades another country, which essentially is an ally of this country and of the West, how else can you describe a government that does that? I'm not talking about the Russian people. I'm talking about the Russian government. So I want to hear your view as to whether you think that RT Russia Today should be banned. 0345 6060 973. Somebody says on a text, I can see your bias from here. Well, I don't hide my political views. In fact, I'm paid to give my views. But what I also do is I allow all sorts of opinion on my programme, and I prefer it when people challenge my views rather than agree with me, because it's actually much more interesting radio when that happens. I don't see a lot of that going on RT, I have to say. Well, Sir David Lidington joins us, Chair of the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, and former Deputy Prime Minister. David, very good evening to you. This is quite a difficult one in many ways. Oh, yes, or definitely not.
No, I agree with you. I'm torn on this one, because I'd shed no tears if RT disappeared from our the news waves, and I certainly, on the rare occasions they've asked me to be interviewed on it, I've turned them down flat. And I do think that that's something Democrats of all British political parties ought to do, just not appear on that channel. But I think it would be a very big step for the British government to take upon itself the power to shut down news channels or any other broadcast channel in our country. It's what we criticise Russia and China and other nations for doing. So I hope Ofcom would have another look at the licence that RT hold, because, like you, I'm deeply sceptical about their claims to meet the impartiality test that's required of licensed stations. But I fear that even if you pass an act of parliament tomorrow that said, we will take new powers, we will ban RT, two things would worry me. One is actually technical, that given the possibility of internet streaming, would in practice be able to stop people getting access to it? I don't think so. One day there'll be a government of a different political stripe. If you had a Jeremy Corbyn type government in office, what might they want to ban?
David, thank you very much. That's Sir David Lidington. Martin Campbell is an advisor for media objectives and a former chief advisor to the broadcasting regulator Ofcom. Martin, good evening to you. Just take us through, first of all, the position, the legal position here, because as I understand it, the government can't close down RT. It would have to be done by Ofcom. And if it was done by Ofcom, what would be the circumstances that would bring that about?
Yeah, evening, Ian. Keir Starmer today is effectively doing what Theresa May did during the Novichok issue. She stood up in Parliament and said, I am going to tell Ofcom to find a way to close down Russia Today. I was very uneasy about that for the reasons that David Lidington has said. And I'm very uneasy about the idea, the government saying this TV station will close down. We will close down this TV station. Ofcom is not an arm of the government. It supposedly acts independently. And I think David's right. If another government comes along and there's a TV channel that they don't like, and they can say that get rid of it, press freedom is down the spout at that point. That really is a problem. What Ofcom will do, and by the way, with this forthcoming communications bill, where Ofcom will have more power over the internet, there is a clause in that which brings Ofcom closer to the government by saying it should do the government's wishes. So we may have a problem in the future. But at the moment, Ofcom can't close down Russia Today because it's Russian. You raised the question about why it was licensed in the first place, and there are questions about that, but the clue is now in the title. It is Russia Today. So you hear a Russian viewpoint on it, and you get some balance. It's not quite in it's not in the Fox News regime. Just as the BBC gives you the viewpoint from the UK and some balance, Russia gives the viewpoint from Russia with some balance. And Ofcom will need to have a look at the impartiality and the accuracy of its bulletins. But there is one key, and that is that there needs to be due accuracy and due impartiality. Well, it's Russia Today. So due accuracy and due impartiality is not the same as total impartiality, total balance, and so on.
Does it depend on viewers complaining? I mean, or can Ofcom just decide to do something themselves off their own bat?
No, Ofcom can decide to do things off their own bat. While I was at Ofcom, I was involved in things that viewers didn't complain about, but we knew that channels shouldn't be doing. And so we acted. And it doesn't matter whether you get one complaint or a million complaints. In theory, it doesn't matter. And in practice, it normally doesn't matter either. They will look at bulletins and see. But their big problem will be the due accuracy and impartiality. Because, while people might say it's a propaganda machine, there is some balance in it. It's not quite the Press TV and Fox TV in that respect. So the whole question of, well, this is Russia Today, viewer expectation is an important point. You expect to find out what the views are from Russia. And there is an argument to say that it's far better to know what the Russians are saying rather than to close off the channel, and it will be available elsewhere anyway, and not know what they're saying.
What about if we were in a state of war with Russia, which I certainly hope never happens, but I mean, it's possible. In those circumstances, it would be ridiculous, wouldn't it, to have the enemy broadcaster broadcasting propaganda into British homes?
Well, yes, of course, put like that it is. But of course, a few minutes ago, you were talking about, making the BBC voice go into Russia, which is what they're trying to do with the UK. Yes, I mean, I'm sure if we were at war, then pressure on Ofcom to say, look, this is not due impartiality, then, close it down if there was a war. But I still worry about the link between being, an independent broadcast regulator rather than a political regulator.
Isn't RT's only purpose to get UK residents to hate and distrust their own government and their country's way of life? I mean, and if that is the purpose, then why on earth would we allow it?
Russia Today has been broadcasting for a long time. So some of its programs are documentaries which are very interesting. The bulletins very often carry far more international news than our home channels. So yes, it makes it all very awkward with the situation in Ukraine. But that is the awkwardness now, where broadcast regulation meets political regulation.
Okay, Martin, thank you. That's Martin Campbell, former chief advisor to the broadcasting regulator Ofcom. So if you were in charge of Ofcom, what would you do? Would you be inclined to ban it, or do you worry that if we live in a liberal democracy, surely we've got to be open to points of view from all over the world, not just our own country? 0345 6060 973. Do you think I've displayed due impartiality there? Hope so. 19 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.